and queers who forget about struggling to adult, we're struggling to human.
At least that's what everyone's telling us.
You're right.
Per usual. Hey, I'm Angela, bringing sense to the conversation. From here on my soapbox, I shed light on the things society doesn't want you to talk about. You know, the real shit that matters, intersectional thinking, sexuality, queerness, neurodiversity, consent, and the fact that self-care is bullshit. For me, it's all about community and how we can care for each other.
And I'm Molly, giving a big fork you to cookie cutter solutions. I help burnt out, busy as fuck, neurodivergent, and queer entrepreneurs make shit happen by providing out of the box solutions and sustainable systems to grow your biz. For me, it's all about doing what makes sense for your brain.
Enough with the chit chat. Let's get to it.
Keep listening, and together we'll explore the drudgery, dreams, and all that shit in between. Get ready to call bullshit on what everyone's saying you should be doing,
as we navigate the spectrum between what really matters to you and the shit keeping you from it.
Hey, everybody. Oh.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so today is weird, sort of introing this episode. But everybody should know Angela's stim toy is lost, and we might have an extra not jittery, that's the wrong word, but like frustrated Angela today. But
only because you've heard me complaining for the last 30 minutes
yes
about everything because I just can't regulate today. But right. I get to focus on you, and that will totally, it'll be good. It'll be good.
I just wanted to mention it because I feel like a lot of times we don't talk about, like, I mean, we do, but not people in as general don't talk about the days where like you are so dysregulated that you want to scream. And so I just wanted to normalize talking about that a little bit before we got started and not call you out. Sorry.
Yeah, like legitimate tears and frustration and upset because this thing that I have really come to depend on is not here. And I don't know where it is, and that just adds to the...
Yes. So I didn't mean to restart you. I just wanted to make sure that...
You just want me to cry again.
I didn't mean to make you cry again. I just wanted everybody listening to feel like, oh, it's not just me. Because I feel like that is a lot of every one of our story is, oh, you mean I'm not the only person feeling like their skin's about to crawl off their body?
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
So, yes. All right.
Yes.
That's all.
But today we get to talk about you. Last week, you facilitated the conversation, as you always do, and brought out my Wonderland story. And this week, we get to bring out your story.
Yes. My Squeaky Velociraptor story.
Exactly. The Velociraptor story, like what the hell's going on? And there are so many things to talk about, and I hope that I am able to grab onto all of the things. But let's start.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start with diagnosis, or do you want to start with, so looking back, as a child, this happened?
I don't, we can start with, as a child, this happened.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So Cinderella, tell me about the aqua marker.
Okay. So my parents have a video of me, and I was 2. I've always been told I was 2. I don't know. I don't remember. That is me coloring with my dad and me going, "You want an aqua marker, daddy?" And like looking at the moment, nobody was like, that's very strange for a 2-year-old to know all their colors and to be like, here's this very obscure color of blue and green mixed together in a very specific way for you to understand that that's aqua. And so looking back, I'm like, okay, like I'll just put that under this column. Like little check mark. And like as I continue to look forward, there are very distinct there's a lot of memories that are good, bad, indifferent. But a lot of those that stick out are the ones where I did something that was obviously neurodivergent and nobody thought about it. Like, we'll get to the Cinderella in a minute. Same house, Cinderella and this happened in the same house. We moved a lot when I was little. So
Mm-hmm.
memories stick to specific locations. Um, I made my mom create a card catalog in Dewey Decimal System, our entire collection of books, which to me felt like a lot. I don't know if there was like 30 or 300. It just felt like a lot. But I remember we wrote on the little pieces of paper and we taped them to the books. And I have been to my mom's house, my parents' house, like in the past 10 years and still seen little like Dewey Decimal stickers on books from
How very Molly of you,
like
honestly.
like wanting to like I went to school, I learned about this thing. Obviously, all books are supposed to be categorized by alphabetical order or like in a specific way. And I did not do it correctly. Like I wasn't necessarily doing it like I didn't research everything about the Dewey Decimal System and then do it in a proper way, but I was intentionally organizing and segmenting and like creating
It sounds
labels
to me like you created your own system
pretty much.
informed by.
Oh, which just reminds me of another story that we'll get to once we get to high school. Um, that's when my linguist tendencies came out. But that same house, I would wake up in the morning and reenact the opening scene, like the scene to Cinderella where Cinderella is like, "Wake up." And like the little birdies are waking Cinderella up. I evidently really wanted to be Cinderella. And I like had a apron that I would tie around my waist and like slipper shoes. Like I would put my shoes on just like Cinderella and I would pretend to take a shower. Like very distinct memory. I feel like I did this way more than once because it's so vivid. Um and just like all of these different things that happened. And so, yeah, I totally was Cinderella for a good long time. And it, like, I feel like those are all things you tick off. Like, it's one thing to be like, Cinderella's cool, and I'm going to pretend to be Cinderella. But taking it to that next level where you're literally reenacting a scene to start your day because that seemed so wonderful for her to have that routine
Mm-hmm.
and want a routine so significant that you're reenacting one to give yourself that. Like that is where I really see that and looking back and go, okay. Like my kiddo does that too. Like we have to play Bluey exactly the way Bluey happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't, no, mom, the next line is you're
Right.
supposed to say, oh, okay, my bad. Um, and yes. Anyway, next question.
Yes. But this is a lifelong love that you have with Disney, right? Like this isn't
Oh,
something that has ever gone away.
mm-mm.
It grew and it continued, and not in the same way that a lot of people are like, "Oh, I love Disney." You're like,
We're
Disney
going to
and
Disney
Disney
World.
World, and it has to happen this many times a year
Yeah.
and
I
in this
haven't been as many
fashion.
times as it feels, I swear. But yeah, no, we have a serious love for Disney in this house. I mean, obviously my first crush was on Disney princess, like hello. Um,
Uh-huh.
uh, Belle and Megara. Mm.
I was gonna say, let's hear about
Yeah.
this because
So,
we've got a whole queer story to tell right along with the
yeah.
ND story. So,
Um, and I don't remember ever talking about the fact that I loved the princesses, unlike my peers. They loved it for one reason, and I loved them for another reason.
mhm,
And I don't think I truly understood because I did grow up in a household where like that wasn't normalized. Um, and Yeah. So, but I remember, I feel like this is a weird story to out on the internet. Um, there was a family friend who, I'm going to try and be vague so that if anybody's listening, they don't feel called out. There was a family friend who was very present for a long time until they weren't. And it was because of drama that I don't know the full story on, but it did relate to being queer. And I always thought that that was the case, like in my brain, like that just made sense because this person is like that. And it was never a bad thing. Like nothing bad ever happened. And with regards to me in that scenario, that was an adult thing that was happening that I have no actual clue what happened. I just know they disappeared. Not because they're dead. Just, I mean, like they just, friendships were gone.
Right.
But that was a person I connected with a lot. Which, why am I crying? Jesus. Anyway, so Disney princesses. I always knew things. Like I guess I just was like, oh, that's how I feel. So everybody feels that way too, and it's normal. I didn't actually think it was weird or different. I don't know. So Belle and Megara, let's see. I was not an Aurora person, but I think that's because Megara and Belle were very strong individuals that took care of themselves, and not all the other princesses did that. So I always not only wanted to be that person, but I wanted to be with that person. You know what I mean? So and that love for Disney like continues to grow. And yes, we've been several times. Yes, my child has been twice. And like Disney's love, like the first time we went to Disney World, I cried because I got to meet Marie from Aristocats. And that was the first character I interacted with. And I literally felt like a 4-year-old. Like, so yes, I ran up to a very fuzzy, large white cat and acted like a child. And that's when my
And most
husband was
likely
like,
squeaky
no.
velociraptored.
Oh, there was so much squeaking and velociraptoring because I have Tourette's. And like, I like would shake. I'm like, we're gonna be aristocrats. And my husband was like, what have I done? Because the love for Disney was not as intense. So yes. Yeah. Don't know how else to explain that.
Also,
like we go hardcore at Disney. There's like a schedule. There are things we're getting done. Now we can't
it's a long process, right? Like for you, it's a long process of preparation, and all of it is part of the beauty of the experience. And
yes. And we work with a travel agent now, Courtney from To Mickey and Beyond. And she is like, you're the easiest to work with because you give me a literal spreadsheet list of your priorities and how to rank them so that I know what to schedule for you so I can get you those things. And I'm like, well, doesn't everybody?
no,
like,
no, they do not.
No, they just expect me to do it all. I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, we literally will take hours and like go through the restaurants and the different adventures and go, how will I respond to this? Is this going to be a loud area? Is this what about their food? We don't see any safe foods on their menu, like, and rack and stack. Like it is a process.
Right.
It's a process, people.
Yes, it's a process, and it's conversations and frustrations and excitement. Yes. And I'm going to move us into the next. I'm going to segue from frustrations into meltdowns.
Oh.
So not knowing your indiness,
yes,
as a child, yet being a human being who experienced meltdowns.
Yeah, I was known for my at the time called tantrums. because
And
they
let's
were
just say we like the term
significant.
meltdowns. We've
Yes.
talked about it. For what it feels like inside of our body, if we're doing the nuclear reactor metaphor,
Mhm.
like for
Yeah.
us, it feels like everything is getting, hot and blowing up and literally melting down and having to be completely rebuilt.
Right. I actually see it as like an ice cube. I feel like I am a ice cube normally, where all the things are in its place and molecularly I can stay together, and then somehow I can't, and like it just like rapid melts and
Yeah.
I melt down. I'm Olaf with no magic. Um um in summer, I should specify. Olaf in summer with no magic. Anyway, yes. So I just remember as a kid getting frustrated, like when I tick because there is a physical feeling of like I have to tense my muscles or do things in a very specific way. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my shit. And I would, because I didn't understand that I needed to do those things. And a lot of times I was being told, hey, you can't do that here, or don't do that,
Mm.
or whatever. And I remember that. And I don't, it was never ill intended at the time. Like it was never, not saying it wasn't significantly traumatic to
Yeah.
me,
Nobody was
but
purposefully trying to cause you
no,
harm. Yes.
no. Um, But, like, to this day, like, if I think about certain situations, I still get tense. Like, right now, like, if I think about certain moments where I would melt down, I, like, start see, like that. And there are certain activities that I can do to help that, but some are not appropriate in public. Um, and as a child who didn't know, A, what I was doing, why I was doing it, or whatever, like, you're just like, "Don't" they're just like, "Don't do that in here." You know, like, and you're like, "Okay." And there was also just lots of crying, lots of emotions. I was very much a sensitive kid.
Air
I
quotes
were
on sensitive, y'all. Air
Yeah.
quotes.
So, okay, I will explain this scenario. This is a classic example of Molly's lost her mind. I haven't really. I'm fine. Mostly. Anyway, so we were at my grandparents' house, and it was at a time when everybody lived there. Like we were all there, and when I say all, there's must have been like 20 of us at grandma's house. And my aunt came into the kitchen, and my aunt loved watching Emeril Lagasse. Now, if you did not watch the Food Network in the 90s, you would not necessarily know who Emeril Lagasse is, but his catchphrase was bang really loud while he threw herbs into a pan. I don't remember the scenario and why that was the call to action at that moment for my aunt, but she did, and it was loud and it was unexpected. And this is before the concept of misophonia or startling, anything like that was a thought in my mind, because I might have been like 7 or 9, like somewhere in that zone. And I screamed, jumped, and then proceeded to bawl for like an hour, like uncontrollably, because it was so loud and so unexpected that it hurt. And it, like, nobody was like, everybody's like, why are you crying? She just like they didn't understand. Like they didn't understand why I was doing that and crying. And obviously looking back, it's like, well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, Jesus. And things like that happened a lot. Like, we are a loud, boisterous family on all varieties. So it, yes. So to this day, yes. And okay, that has nothing to do with well, yes, this does have to do with meltdowns. When I was 5, my aunt was doing my hair at the breakfast table, and I was eating Cheerios, which up to this point was a safe food. And I've had a pretty broad, for the most part, safe foods list my life. But then there are none. Then there are some that are not. So I was eating Cheerios with milk, which I have an issue with milk. Milk is gross.
It is gross.
So she's blow drying my hair. And to be silly, as adults do with children, she blows on my Cheerios, which proceeds to, air quote again, burn my Cheerios. Like, I tasted a significant difference between when the Cheerios had not been blown on by hot air from an hair dryer and when they did. And I can taste it to this day. And to this day, I do not eat Cheerios. I can't. But one time I was at my opposite family grandparents' house and they only had Cheerios to eat for breakfast. And I was like, fine, I will cake them in sugar and all will be well. Well, this story still continues to be told till this day because my grandma has a bowl of sugar and a bowl of salt.
Oh, shit.
If you could see my face right now, it's not good. I put about 7 spoons of what I thought to be sugar on those Cheerios because I wanted to be able to somehow consume food. It was salt. And my uncle watched me do it.
Oh.
And was just like, because I went, yeah, no. So we'll just add that to the list.
Right. Okay. I continuing on meltdowns.
Yes.
We met in 2020. And
oh my God, it's been that long. I mean, it's been that short, but long and like, okay. Whatever.
I know it's so weird. It feels like we've known each other like for our whole lives, but it's yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So when we met, I would say for the first almost year, that we were colleagues, acquaintances, then colleagues / friends. Both of us masked heavily.
Significantly. Yes.
I had no idea that you had Tourette's because you worked really hard, spent a lot of energy to not ever let that show up in any of our meetings, anytime you were in the professional capacity. So it wasn't until you and I really started having the one-on-one conversations that came out. And then that proceeded to come out as us talking about lots of different things. And then we had the same, right? Like the same issue with me of not being heavily masked. So your meltdowns looked a little bit different. And one of my big memories of you is you would be fine, you would be fine, you would be fine, you would be fine. And then you would be really fucking sick.
Yeah.
As in your throat, your ears, everything full. I can't talk. 3 weeks. I'm out. I'm done.
Yep. On routine cycle. Yes. So I now know that I'm bipolar. I didn't know that then. I had been diagnosed in my early 20s with Tourette's, schizoaffective disorder, panic disorder, orders of all sorts. And I had not been medicated since before my kiddo was born in 2017. Well, since before I got pregnant in 2016. And I had learned from being in the military that squeaking like a velociraptor either results in getting names, which I didn't mind the name. I was Sergeant Squeaks. It wasn't bad.
Right.
Like it was fine. But that people don't like at giant heads of command meetings for their sergeants to squeak in the middle of a meeting or shake or whatever. And so years of school and not realizing that it was Tourette's and me just wanting to fit in and not be different, I learned to tense my legs under the table and keep my hands under there and like squeeze my legs. And I would hold in whatever I could of the verbal portion of the tics. Because if you didn't know this, Tourette's is a verbal and physical uncontrolled vocalization and movement at the same time, which I mean, they're kind of asynchronous sometimes, but, and that is not a clinical definition because I am not a doctor or have ever read the DSM. I just know what people have told me. And I've read.
And your experience. And your own experience
like
of this. Right.
Right. You know, just wanted to be clear. That was not clear. So I had been going against what I felt and what I knew to actually be true. That sounds like some religious statement. And like I was going against the advice that I knew would actually get me somewhere. And I was doing the things that I was being told would get me somewhere, even though I kept seeing sign after sign after sign that there was bullshit. And like, this is where my philosophy on cookie cutters don't work. Well, except for sugar cookies. And I was masking heavily because I would literally be falling apart and crying before a session. And then I would somehow bring myself together and like do these coaching sessions and strategy sessions. And I would do them, but I was also pretending to not be me and give the advice of someone else would want to hear instead of the advice that I knew needed to be said, which that slowly chipped away after time, as I realized what was actually the problem.
Right.
And at the time I was working at, one of my clients was a shaman and one of the other clients was an energy worker, and the shaman was an energy worker too. But both of them were like, you need to stop. Like you are having like a spiritual metaphysical like issue. Like you're making yourself sick.
Right.
And at first I was like, what? Like, yeah. And then like the more I worked with them and the more I read their stuff and I read like, oh, there is this type of like connection, like this mind body connection where your mind can do amazing, ridiculous things to protect itself.
Right.
And I mean, I was getting like, I have asthma, don't get me wrong, but like I was getting bronchitis so bad that I couldn't function. And it was like eventually realizing it was pairing with my bipolar episodes as well. Like, and just there's so many cycles involved and like things
Right.
like menstrual cycles adding to all of those other things. And then
Right, because you have PCOS, there's right, like there's some hormone imbalance and discomfort that happens and, you know, infertility, like
yes. There's so
right.
much to this story, right?
There's
I
so
feel like
much
I'm
to
a
this
normal
story.
person until I start talking.
But you and I had a conversation. Like I was like, "Molly, let's talk." And
Conversations with Angela where she starts like that never end without you crying.
not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. But it was, "Molly, I'm seeing a cycle and I'm seeing this thing happen and I'm watching your reaction to this thing because you are not able to respond because you are so frustrated about this thing. And yet you continue to allow this thing without speaking about it, without saying, no, this is how I need to respond to this, or this is what I need. And then your work would suffer. You would start to get disorganized, which is definitely not a Molly trait. And like there was this very serious progression. And I said, you're making yourself sick, not on purpose, but by walking through the world in a way that is not authentic to you and it's actually harming you. And that was before we started having conversations of, hey, maybe you're not just ADHD,
Yes.
Angela.
Yeah.
So quickly, this conversation turned right back around.
Yeah. It
But I
did.
think that was right. That was the beginning of our like legitimate, loving co-regulation friendship that we have today.
Right. I would agree. It it was our stories were so different, but like coded in the same
So similar.
similarities, like similar diagnoses, similar, symptoms, similar things. And it's funny because we actually have slightly different. I mean,
Very
you have
different
very different
neurodivergencies. Yeah.
yes. Um, but there were so many overlaps that felt familiar, and that's kind of how we figured out like we need to do something, and that's where it was like, oh, because I think you pointed out like you do really well with neurodivergent people. Like you were like, this is really your strong suit. And I was like, yeah, I do enjoy working with them more than I enjoy working with neurotypical people.
Right.
Mostly because they like symptoms more and they want to know like global thing. Like not always, everybody's different, but like, and it just helped push me into going fuck this and ripping off the mask, which was not necessarily the best tactic, but like I'm all for unmasking. Maybe don't rip it off unless you feel ready for like a completely like waterfall of 300 million things you didn't realize you weren't addressing.
We need to have an entire episode on that of like what happens after diagnosis and why support for adults who get diagnosed late are need supports that are absolutely not there, because like
Right.
that year after diagnosis is
Mhm.
so full of wonderful emotions of, oh my gosh, here's this community and these people who understand me, as well as grief for this
Mhm.
entire life, as well as learning stuff and getting hyper focused on learning and trying to figure out who you are. And yeah, it's a
Yeah.
process.
And I think that I was lucky enough to have already realized I was ND. If I didn't know that word necessarily, I knew the concept of like my brain is just completely different than the average person. Like, and I was doing all the work with my ND kiddo, my NB kiddo.
Hmm.
And and so I was doing a lot of research and understanding and going to therapy and OT and like realizing all these things that I did not learn as a human. And so then I started like putting those things into practice with my spouse and you and me talking about BDSM and how that relates to relationships
Sensory.
and sensory stuff, like all of those things. And are things perfect? No fucking way. Um but we are significantly in a different, better place because of all of that. Um, and to your point about like diagnosis and change and grief, uh, so I was only diagnosed bipolar in the past, what, 3 months, 4 months,
Uh-huh.
right before Thanksgiving, US Thanksgiving, because evidently Canada's is in October.
Correct.
Um, so US Thanksgiving in November. Um, and it was fucking hard. Not the diagnosis. I felt like I had suggested that 10 years ago and nobody listened. And I should have just pushed it because it was like, no, like I know 3 people with bipolar 2. Like this is I feel like I'm having the same things. Like, so there was that grief and the aspect of like, I just wish people would fucking listen. Like I wish providers would listen. And this is probably magnified by the fact that like the mama gut on a lot of things for the kiddo, and the fact that I have been able to help so many people recognize which neurodivergent category they fall under or which flavor of spice, neurospice flavor they are.
Yeah, what is
Which,
their spicy mix?
yes. Which packet of neurospicy flavor do you want today? Um,
Because there are a lot of packets. It
there
takes up an
are.
entire shelving system in a grocery store.
Right. And like a lot of people I talk to where I'm like, my first inclination is you're blah, 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 blah. But I would just go in and be like, what am I? To the doctor every time, almost every time it's come back. Molly, you were right. You sent me in the right thing. I mean, the other day I sent one of my friends to the urgent care. I was like, I'm pretty sure you have pneumonia, by her talking to me and just looking at her. And she comes back. She's like, so they think I'm on the road to pneumonia. Thanks for sending me to the urgent care. So like, this is some like mystical magic superpower I have. I don't know. Somehow I've picked up on pattern recognition, because let's be real, that's all that really is. Like, anyway, I don't know how I got on that very specific tangent. So I was grieving the lost time, the stability, the loss of time in stable emotional state. If I had been stable, would I have been able to stay in the military? If I had been XYZ, would that have meant whatever here? So there was just a lot of what felt like loss. Which, and it's very similar to when you go from being infertile to being a mom, because now you're not part of either community because you've experienced both sides.
Yeah.
And so it was that very, like, you're not saying you regret not being infertile, but you don't feel like you're part of that community anymore. But the mom community talks about other things, and you're like, but that's not the story for everybody. And you're like somewhere in the middle. And
that's not my experience at all.
Right. And not to mention, I was not a love at first sight with my baby kind of mom. So that just adds to the other side of the coin where I'm just like,
well, and the sensory, the sensory thing as a parent. So as a parent who doesn't like certain kinds of touches or who gets touched out, which is a very normal thing to happen, but gets shamed and shunned in public if you even talk about that or refer to that, which is a shame, I think, because that conversation needs to be normalized.
Yeah. And I somehow
love your child very, very much without wanting your child to be touching you all of the time.
Right. And I somehow made it. I have like touch aversion. If you're going to touch me, I need you to like touch me, and it needs to be for short periods of time. Like, I can't handle a lot. And somehow I made it through 18 months of breastfeeding, but it took everything. Like, it was the right decision for us, but it took everything from me to do it. Right. And now I am now completely touch aversion. Don't touch me. But I have a 5-year-old, so that doesn't happen.
Right.
So, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to bring us back a little bit before babies and things. Piano and voice school and the experience there of not knowing that you are in D, however, recognizing that all of the people who you love and appreciate being around and participating in this with have similar traits as you. Yeah. Okay, talk about that.
So I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts in DC for the first 2 years of high school when we lived in DC. Obviously, when we lived in DC. Okay. And so it's literally art school. Like, it's mini college level, like music and dance and theater and museum studies and all this stuff. And it's a great school. And they have, so you do like half a day of normal academics, and then the second half of your day is all of your majors. What is happening?
This person right here, this human being, is leaving for work and was biting me to say goodbye. Sorry.
Totally fine. I mean, that's just normal. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, that's normal.
Correct.
So
half of day, the other half of the day.
So first half of the day is academics. The other half of the day was whatever your major and minors were. And everybody there is exceptional at what they do. Like, let's talk about special interests. Okay. So these people are exceptional, and most of these people want to do this professionally, if not all of them, when they go out into this world. Like, people go Broadway and become movie stars, and literally.
Right.
Like, in the, like, entrance to the theater, we had Stevie Wonder's piano. Like, this is the kind of facility it was. And I say that just because, like, the caliber of people like that you're talking about are people who are highly dedicated and have been dedicated for years to get to this point. And so everybody there is a little bit not typical in that regard. And I say that
right, because everybody there truly does have, whether there is any kind of neurological condition, there's definitely special interest,
right,
which leads to the exceptional
yes,
work that is being done by each and every one of the individuals in this school made for people like that.
right. And so I just remember it's been a long fucking time. It's been what, 18 years? Yeah, 18 years. So everybody wanted to be there and worked really hard. But everybody there was themselves. There was minimal like masking. Because even before I knew these things were things, like, and things that may not be like public things.
Right.
We had transgender students, and we had non-binary students, and students with green hair, and all the colors actually.
The quote unquote quirky art people.
Absolutely, the whole school was that. And
yes,
a lot of people who were identifying as gay or lesbian, and that was normal. Like it was just assumed everybody was like to an extent LGBTQ in some way or fashion. And if you weren't, you were absolutely an ally. Like, so you were still a part of the community.
Right.
And I remember we went to like a club, and I just remember there being lots of alphabet letters at the time, and it made sense that it was like a queer thing. And looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes like hello. But we went because the group that I was with, like, I had not come out, but I was definitely bi, but everybody else was bi or gay. Like there was
right.
Like, so it was just like we went, and that was normal. And my crew, which if they're listening, hi. We like one wrote exquisite stories, and she would tell us them like they were like folklores with significantly advanced storylines and characters and all of these things that just like for me who has a super vivid memory or visual processing, like it was like watching a movie. Another kid could draw so well, like anything, and was really into superheroes, and like we all picked an X-Men. And just different things. And so I think that whole bit is a significant point of my story and my ability to advocate eventually and be so like cool about a lot of things.
What if the conversations that we're having now were being had then?
Right. I think we'd both be different humans at this point. And there's just, looking back, it was stressful and hard. And that's where I had my first major depressive episode, which is what led to them being able to diagnose me with bipolar so easily recently, is because they were like, well, when was the first time? And I was like, I didn't go to school for 3 weeks, and they had to give me an elevator pass because I couldn't climb the stairs. And she was like, oh, okay. Like, so there were things that were significant, but there's also really amazing core memories from that. Like if you've watched Inside Out, you should, because core memories are very important. But that is, yes. So that was a very big part of, and it's funny because it feels like a completely different person or lifetime because I don't do most of those things anymore.
But you do play piano, and it is a regulative activity that you do.
Yes, but I don't
And
play it
when
for
you
8 hours a day.
right, when you forget to do it, sometimes being steered back to go spend some time at the piano is something that is a beautiful tool for you to do. Okay, so last bits and pieces that you would like to share about your story that you want people to know before we sign off.
Oh God. I don't know. There's so much. We only got through like half the life. But
I know, that's how I felt last week. It's like, yeah, this is just, all those iceberg pictures. Like, yeah, you haven't even hit the water yet. You are just the very tip.
I think that it's very interesting to reflect on like the high points and the super low points and skipping the middle part. Because I feel like that's kind of what we've done today a little bit, is just skipping the middle part where, it's hard all the time, but like, and then helping
We get to
you
talk
look at
about
those.
that all the time in all of our other episodes, right?
Right. And so taking a moment to look at your own life through those high points and just those low points, and trying to see like what are significant motivating factors in your own life. Because if some of those low points aren't resolved, then something needs to change.
Right.
And
like then we continue the pattern.
Right.
That can lead to destruction.
Right. And so, right. And if you're perpetually getting sick and you just need to be like, am I sick because I'm burnt out? Like, please message us. Like, we're here for those kinds of conversations and can like help you find resources. Because we don't want anybody to be struggling because they feel like they can't talk to somebody. That's the whole point of our podcast in the first place, is that you should not have to and do not need to struggle, that there are other neurodivergent humans who are going to understand what's happening, that can help you move to the next step. Because all that matters right now is your next step, not the end, like just the next
And part
step.
of our success and what helps us through those really difficult moments that we have, like me not having my STEM toy, like part of ours is that we have each other, that we recognize how important co-regulation is, that we validate each other in our feelings, and it's the community that is so important, which I am so very, very grateful for you for being that person for me. I have several people in my life who are supportive, and I appreciate every single one for what they do. And yours is being like seriously on this journey with me. And I know at 3:00 in the morning, I can send you a Marco Polo. And even though we're not going to talk about it until the next day, I can feel better because I know that I have been seen and heard.
Feels the same way, because the other day when I was struggling, I was like, where's my Marco Polo? I got a financial and I did message you, and you fixed it. Just by listening and talking.
Right. Sometimes you just have to say it. Sometimes you just have to say it or type it on those days where I'm like, I can't speak right now, but I can type it. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Cool. Last thoughts, Molly, because I'm going to sign us off. No? Okay. Thanks for listening to Drudgery, Dreams, and In Between, a weekly live podcast coming to you every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. If you're catching this live on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel for updates when we're back here next week. For all you podcast geeks, subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We're on them all. If you'd like to support the podcast, be sure to leave a rating and review and share with your friends. To catch all the latest from us, visit us at drudgeryanddreams.com and follow on your favorite social media platforms at Drudgery and Dreams. Thanks again. See you next time.